Dear listener, thank you for your interest in my study on how the unsaid shapes decision-making in boards. In the next 10 to 15 minutes, I will present a brief summary of my PhD dissertation. As the 4 papers that make up my dissertation are still under review, as I aim to publish them in academic journals, I cannot share them with you, but I hope this presentation offers some insight in the theories that I developed during my PhD. Moreover, you will find information on my website, marilike.com, including an article on the costs of communication in the boardroom. My name is Marilike Engbers. I completed my PhD at the School of Business and Economics of the Vrije Universiteit in Amsterdam in October 2020. I combined teaching strategy realization for the Finance and Control program of the Vrije Universiteit with consulting work and lecturing on board effectiveness, self-evaluations, strategy and leadership. When I decided to pursue a PhD, I knew I wanted to explore boards' decision making. As I am a former Arthur Andersen employee, it was painful to watch how Arthur Andersen collapsed due to Enron and decisions that were made by board members. And I wondered, how come these smart board members have not been able to prevent these scandals, and even sometimes winded up in jail for their actions, like the CEO of Enron in the picture? Did they consciously do wrong, or did more or other factors come into play? Did they silence their thoughts and feelings, and if so, why? Could silence explain these failures? I first explored how much we, academically speaking, already know about the unsaid and decision-making in the boardroom. I slowly but increasingly realized how little we actually know about these board processes, as only few scholars have been able to observe the boardroom processes from within, and thus do not know how board members actually behave. Moreover, I learned that regarding the unsaid, scholars merely focused on employees' motives for silencing and voicing their opinion, but not on those of people in power, assuming they have no reasons to silence their thoughts and feelings. As scholars consider the decision-making processes in the boardroom a black box, I think it's important to emphasize that the purpose of this study was to develop theory and thus not to test or justify theories and hypotheses. This means I took on the role of the detective. I answered the main question, how does the unsaid shape decision-making in the boardroom, by exploring 4 different sub-questions in 4 different papers, and I will briefly present each of these papers now. In the first paper, I theorize how, when board members do not say what they mean and/or assume not all is said, they risk eliciting a spiral of unsaid known. In this paper, I introduce a conceptual model which I developed based on literature, and I introduce the construct unsaid known. The unsaid known refers to the intuitive knowing that shapes an individual's response, but what does that mean? As people are able to think around 800 to 1400 words per minute, they are able to process a lot more words than they are physically able to express. How many words per minute do you think they can say? I learned people can only express about 300 words max per minute, but in normal conversations they express around 140 words per minute. Although we consciously tend to focus on what is said, we preconsciously listen to what is not said. Preconsciously means that people have forgotten about this skill, but when reflecting on it, they can explain what they felt and thought but did not say, and why not. We developed metacognitive skills, which allow us to preconsciously think about our own thinking, about what others think, and what others might be thinking about their thinking. We need these metacognitive skills to effortlessly respond in the moment. In a group like in the picture, this means that while people talk and other people listen, a lot happens unsaid. Interestingly, when what is said is not aligned with what is felt and thought, people tend to focus more on the unsaid than on the said. The relevance of the unsaid increases. Unfortunately, our metacognitive skills are not flawless. Our silent assessments and inferences can be biased or incorrect, but as long as they remain silent, they're not explored, neither refuted. In this paper, I also theorize that boards are open systems. Board members continuously communicate with stake and shareholders, and therefore the unsaid between stakeholders and boards shape their decision-making processes as well. In the second paper, I introduced the term paradigm attachment. This construct emerged from studying boards empirically. In a governance context where board members have to respond quickly and effortlessly, they respond based on a set of connected implicit assumptions or governance paradigm. Board members are governance paradigm attached when they perceive their assumptions on the governance task objective and true. A governance paradigm conflict then emerges when board members silently and unknowingly have different expectations about the governance task and start judging each other's performance when they consider their paradigm true or objective. Picture this situation. One non-executive with a specific governance paradigm is not happy with how something is managed by the CEO and politely tries to address his concern through posing a question. The CEO with another paradigm senses the non-executive is not happy, also does not understand the feedback, but responds politely by answering the question. The non-executive is not satisfied with the response because he feels not all is said and starts feeling even more concerned, so he poses an additional question. The CEO gets irritated because she feels not appreciated but repeats her answer. In this case then the chair steps in and suggests to move on as he feels the CEO has sufficiently answered the question. The bystanders, or other non-executive and executives who have noticed the tension was building up, assess the performance of the CEO, the chair, and the non-executive differently or similarly depending on their paradigm, and moreover have similar or different expectations on how this tension should be handled by whom. How and if this conflict is reconciled depends on what happens in or after the meeting and who discusses what with whom formally and or informally. When this situation is not managed effectively, a cool situation can grow into a pseudo-cool or even hot conflict. When the board members with the minority paradigm is ostracized, and or when he or she leaves the board, the conflict is managed, but the underlying paradigm conflict about the governance task and blind spots about own and others' performances has not surfaced. In the third paper, the sub-question how silence climates shape decision-making in the boardroom is explored. I theorize in this paper that four distinct silence climates shape how board members manage the conflict between, on the one hand, cohesiveness and on the other hand, cognitive conflict. I have plotted these two criteria and four climates in the quadrant, which is shown on the slide. A compliance climate, for example, has a high level of cohesiveness, but low levels of cognitive conflict when board members silently agree that they should silence their opinion when the topic which is of concern is not of their responsibility. A conflict climate, on the contrary, has a low level of cohesiveness when, due to cognitive conflict, board members enact relationship conflicts. In a pseudo-cohesiveness climate, some board members know there is a conflict, but have different expectations on how the conflict should be managed, while other board members are not aware there is a conflict. In an agree to disagree climate, board members acknowledge the risk of eliciting relationship conflicts and therefore have explicitly introduced rules to how to manage the situation when experiencing cognitive conflicts. A silence climate, I theorize, is very volatile. This means a climate can dramatically change or evolve into a different climate when A, the composition of the board changes, or B, a specific climate has not been able to manage the specific tension adequately. In the last paper, I justify how I studied the unsaid in the boardroom and reflected upon my approach. First, I observed and tape recorded 36 meetings of 17 boards, and these observations allowed me to understand the specific context, routine, and language of the board. After the meeting, I interviewed all 119 board members who were present during the board meeting which I observed, and we analyzed in action what was not said and why not. While analyzing and comparing the data, I simultaneously shared my emerging theories during presentations and explored to what extent these theories resonated with these attending board members. In addition, I reflected upon when I thought the unsaid emerged during the research and how my biases and incongruities could have shaped my findings. I theorized that it's important to recognize different types or levels of unsaid: the unsaid known, the unsaid, and the shared unsaid. The unsaid known refers to the intuitive, preconscious assessing and responding in the moment, during meetings and conversations, as I referred to earlier. The unsaid refers to an individual's judgment after the moment, and these judgments shape future responses. Shared unsaid refer to when a subgroup of individuals after the fact share their judgments with each other, and these informal meetings shape future responses as well. I also explained that through perspective taking, the unsaid can be brought into consciousness. Silent judgments, on the contrary, suppress the sharing of the unsaid. Concluding, what do these findings imply? As board members preconsciously decide what to say and not to say, when, to whom, and why, they do not always intentionally silence what they think and feel. They operate in this highly taken for granted way due to a combination of limited time, complex issues, and high expectations of stakeholders. Only when they experience a conflict, they start consciously deciding if or how to speak up, and face many serious voice dilemmas. Speaking up is not just a matter of courage, but of real risk. As governance codes and rules do not explain how and when to voice and handle these conflicts, they nurture the conflict when board members have a conflict on how these conflicts should be managed. Thank you for your interest and your attention.